seen, because we have seen it already from a previous stream. But we've got the Dusclops, the Glastrier, we've got that really strong combination, Trick Room combination there, the Grimmsnarl support with Landorus Therian, and then that duo that we've already seen and be so effective between the Torkoal and that Gigantamax Venusaur.
Exactly, that bind Dusclops really kind of giving a few people a surprise on there. You know, we always say that Dusclops has so many moves that it can utilize, but bind is not normally one of the common options, but it's certainly paying well for Nick. You know, he's made it through here into the global finals and is still in the competition, but his opponent that he has to beat in order to stay in Players Cup 2 is going to be Federico, and he is rocking a really cool team where you've got that Moltres and Raichu again. We've got the Kartana, Tapu Fini, Cresselia, and Stakataka. Now, Stakataka was a Pokemon you highlighted. You said it was kind of a sleeper pick going into this Players Cup 2, Lee.
Yeah, so it's really nice to see it being featured here, and I think it makes for a very good answer against Glastrier, especially in the Trick Room environment, because the one thing that Stakataka does have going for it is that it is slower than both Dusclops and the Glastrier, making sure that it can move first and maybe get some really pivotal damage off before these Pokemon can actually start getting the damage on your side of the field. The other thing is Stakataka makes for a great, you know, Dynamax Pokemon as well, and if you can start getting those Beast Boosts up, it depends where Federico's kind of trained it and what stats it's trained to get those Beast Boosts in, but if it's in something like Attack, it could really start to get momentum very quickly, and with support there straight away from the Cresselia, which is an ideal support Pokemon with it. You know, commonly seen things like Ally Switch on Cresselia supporting things like Celesteela, Stakataka to avoid that damage. So there's lots of interesting things going on Federico's team, and he's got a lot of ways to kind of disrupt what Nick wants to do, and that Galarian Moltres is a perfect Pokemon to be an answer for the Dusclops on Nick's side of the field to prevent the Trick Room if he doesn't want it going up.
Yeah, they certainly have some interesting achievements as well as Pokemon on their team. We take a look at Nick, recapping again, you know, 2017 was his real standout year. They're top 8 at 2 international events, being a regional champion in the same year as well, and then in 2019 taking another regional title at the Dallas Regional Championships. And Federico as well has a lot of consistency here. You know, right back in 2015 was the Argentina regional champion, was able to take the Argentina Nationals in the following year, and then made top 32 at Worlds in 2017, and then beat that by going in top 8 and 2018. So phenomenal play from both these players. You know, it is high level competitive play you're going to get when you see these two names against each other.
100%, very exciting going in, especially seeing those accomplishments again from those players. If you look at Federico's, it's just getting better and better and better as the time goes on, and being national champion is a real accomplishment as well. So, you know, both regional champions, and it's going to be a real hot game going into this one. You know, I think the teams, there is a lot again where there's answers to a lot of the big threats from both sides of the field. It's just how these players kind of utilize these Pokemon, but I can see maybe the Moltres being a big part of Federico's plans here to shut down potentially a Trick Room, but I don't think he needs to worry too much if a Trick Room does go up because of that Stakataka, and that's going to be something that's worrying Nick. And I think maybe the Gigantamax Venusaur is something that he can really make use of in this one, especially with that support from the Torkoal.
Yeah, exactly. That Galarian Moltres, I'm sure, will be an absolute highlight. No doubt for you, Lee. No matter what it does, if it appears on the screen, you will be very happy. So let's jump into game one and see if it is going to be breaking out here in game one of this losers bracket round 3 match. It's going to be Raichu and Cresselia actually leading out there for Federico. Grimmsnarl and Venusaur being the choice, however, for Nick. And, you know, Venusaur, he's led this quite often without the Torkoal. Torkoal might potentially be hiding in the back, but Nick has also been proven to not even bring the two together. Sometimes just letting Venusaur shine on its own, getting that G-Max Vine Lash up and getting residual damage out on the field.
Yeah, it's a nice lead here from Nick. Again, you know, we've seen how well and effective this lead can be, and with the flexibility of options like Torkoal to switch in from the back. But not only that, but with the screen support that the Grimmsnarl can provide for the Venusaur, if it does decide to go for the G-Max here and start getting damage onto the opposing side of the field very quickly. Cresselia in a position where it can potentially go for a Trick Room, and Raichu in a position to get a nice supporting fake out off, but is going to be susceptible to getting a big attack and potentially knocked out from this Venusaur if it does decide to go for the G-Max.
Yeah, straight away going for a Gigantamax up there on Nick's side of the field with that Gigantamax Venusaur. Wouldn't be surprised to see that G-Max Vine Lash come into effect, start setting up the residual damage going onto the field here, because that can certainly start adding up and breaking potential focus stashes here as well, potentially on that Raichu. Raichu actually looks like it was going straight there for the fake out, so gonna fall onto no avail there really. You know, Venusaur in Gigantamax form won't be able to flinch. Is able to go for the Vine Lash, however, connecting down onto the Cresselia does a huge amount of damage as well, taking down to nearly 50% damage depleted, as Venusaur takes a little bit of Life Orb recoil as well. Cresselia, however, is going to be able to utilize that Trick Room, and this is something Grimmsnarl's not going to mind too much, having the Prankster ability. It doesn't really mind about the speed stats.
No, it doesn't at all. The Prankster ability kind of negating any sort of the Trick Room setup there and allowing it to still set these screens up. You know, it's already got one up and it can still support as much as it wants with that Prankster ability. And Venusaur also not really too worried at the moment either with the Trick Room setup. You know, the Raichu in front of it now is definitely not a Pokemon that likes being in a Trick Room setting, so maybe a Max Quake into that slot might not be a bad idea from Nick. You also get the special defense boost, or you could maybe just concentrate and target down the Cresselia, just remove it from the field, because we saw the damage that previous turn from the Gigantic Vine Lash. It did so much damage, and it's going to be able to pick the damage up again this coming turn.
Well, a Pokemon that also doesn't mind being in Trick Room is going to be Dusclops, and it's joining the field, asserting some pressure as Federico decides to retreat the Cresselia in place of Tapu Fini. Now, if potentially that Venusaur has gone for a G-Max Vine Lash into that slot, it's going to be able to deal a huge chunk of damage. The Misty Surge has activated on the field, so we know Raichu can't get up to any Nuzzle shenanigans here, putting any Pokemon into a state of paralysis. And it is indeed the G-Max Vine Lash going to connect down onto that Tapu Fini that switched in. It's a solid one-hit KO, Lee.
It's down in one hit. Unfortunately, the Tapu Fini coming in on the wrong turn here for Nick, who's just taken full advantage of the fact that he knows he's got nothing to lose going into that Cresselia slot here, making sure that he can remove it from the field and take it down. But the Tapu Fini switching in, really punishing here for Federico, who's just trying to maybe change his board position a little bit. The Raichu getting out for free, and it does allow the Stakataka to get in. But on the other hand as well, you look at Nick's side of the field, he's got that Dusclops onto the field now and in a great position where if he wants to, he can reverse the Trick Room quite freely this next turn.
Yeah, so much just went on in that particular turn. Tapu Fini's gone down. It allows Federico to bring in two Pokemon that, you know, don't mind being in this kind of Trick Room environment. Stakataka certainly is the optimal Pokemon to have here. But as you mentioned, Dusclops can just reverse around the Trick Room. Of course, Cresselia and Stakataka both have access to Trick Room as well. But if Federico's locking into that move, then that Pokemon obviously isn't going to be able to deal any offensive pressure in this Trick Room environment, leaving the Venusaur free to go for another one of those G-Max Vine Lashes, and going into either of these Pokemon is going to deal a huge chunk of damage. On the same side, if you're Federico, you know, Cresselia is known to sometimes carry the move Ally Switch, so it can potentially try and predict exactly where Nick's going to target with his Venusaur, and if it's suboptimal to Federico, he can try and switch up which Pokemon's going to receive that attack. It's going to be a Dynamax, however, straight away from Federico. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see this being the Stakataka. It's already a big Pokemon, but hey, let's just double the size and its HP stat as well and make it even more formidable. I think the critical thing with Stakataka, though, as well, is it can start going for things like Max Steel Spike, start boosting up the defenses, can also go for Max Rock Falls and set up some of that Sandstorm as well and start dealing some damage. But Cresselia is indeed going to go for the Ally Switch here, so Stakataka, even though it is big, is going to switch right over to the other side of the field here as Stakataka goes for that Max Rockfall. Going to be able to connect down onto the Venusaur. It does a decent chunk of damage, but there are no boosts on Stakataka at the moment, so not going to be in any range of a KO, but does set up the sand. Going to be setting that residual chip damage up every single turn as well. Venusaur is going to go for the G-Max Vine Lash. It's going to fall down onto the Stakataka that was where the Cresselia was, and Stakataka going to be able to take that really well.
Yeah, showing its defensive capabilities here, taking that a lot better than what the Cresselia took it earlier, and really taking advantage of the Trick Room here while it has got the time to. The problem is now Venusaur is going to be back in its preferred environment. The Cresselia revealing the Ally Switch, which does throw up the mind games, but you know the Cresselia are in a position now where one more turn and one more round of these G-Max Vine Lashes to go, it will fall, and it's going to be prone to even something like a Nightshade from the Dusclops as well. So in a really awkward position now, and does Federico want to try and preserve it? It is his only means to setting up Trick Room at the moment with that Stakataka being in Dynamax form. Not going to have access to that option anymore until it is reverted back, and still going to be threatened heavily by something like an Earth Power as well from the Venusaur.
Yeah, the Stack Attacker as well, setting up that Sand as well, going to be boosting up its special defense, which is going to be great when you're facing down against that Venusaur. It does give Nick a couple of options depending on how he wants to play this game going forward. If he wants to switch up the board state, now that there isn't the Trick Room there on the field, he wants to try and utilize having a fast Pokemon on the field and using them to the best of his ability. Venusaur, of course, can't go for any status afflictions while that Misty Terrain is in effect on the Pokemon, of course, that are grounded. Venusaur is going to go for that Leaf Storm, however, connected down into the Cresselia. It is enough to pick up the KO. Would have, of course, still done some good damage to that Stack Attacker if there'd been another cheeky ally switch in there, but doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Cresselia has left the field, going back to its Pokeball as Dusclops does go for that Nightshade. Just going to do 50 HP to that Stack Attacker that can fire off a max Rockfall in return. This is going to target down onto that Dusclops. Again, going to be able to take that really well. Stack Attacker doesn't have any kind of attack boost at this stage, and it really does need that in order to start dealing out some really big damage.
Yeah, it really needs the support of the Trick Room, and without the Cresselia now on the field to provide that support, it's going to be very difficult for it to gain any momentum and especially take advantage of these Dynamax turns without any sort of boost from a weakness policy or anything like that. We don't know the item on it yet, so it's very difficult for Federico to get the damage essentially he needs off, and the Raichu coming in a pretty healthy position, but not really in a Pokemon that you rely on an offensive presence that can do the damage that you need, especially in this situation when you're facing down against a Dusclops and a Venusaur with also the Grimmsnarl and an additional Pokemon in the back for Nick.
Exactly, and Raichu joining the field here can easily go for a fake out into that Venusaur, but instead just going to go straight up for the Volt Switch here. It's not quite enough to pick up the KO against the Venusaur, so Stack Attacker will be exposed to this Earth Power, not going to be able to take it, and will be KO, going up in a nice big explosion there to return to its Pokeball. You can see it really crumbling. It loses its legs and the animation as it falls down. But Venusaur, however, too strong for itself, even going to KO itself in recoil, leaving Dusclops here to go for the Nightshade, connecting down into Raichu, doing again 50 HP. Raichu, however, is still going to have that little bit of chip from this Sandstorm, as is, of course, Dusclops, and this residual damage really coming into effect quite strong.
Yeah, and now it's really out of Federico's hands, and Nick going to be able to close this one up quite easily here as he brings the Grimmsnarl back onto the field. Not revealing that fourth and final Pokemon to Federico, which is the smart thing to do. You don't necessarily need to do that at the moment, and it kind of keeps a bit of, information back for the next game that Nick has got the advantage going into with this first round win, because the Raichu, unfortunately, as you can see, is just not going to be able to do the damage that it needs to either of these Pokemon on Nick's side of the field, and poor little Raichu falling victim to a Spirit Break there from that scary Grimmsnarl.
So let's jump into game 2 and see exactly how these players are going to change things up. I mean, like you said, Lee, wouldn't be surprised to see that Venusaur at all out there in the action, but Federico might want to shake it up a little bit, and there's going to be a Moltres on the field paired up with that Raichu. Grimmsnarl and Glastria, however, being the Pokemon options there for Nick, and the one thing I love about having the Raichu here is it does provide any potential kind of Lightning Rod support for that Moltres. If there were to be any electric type moves, in terms of a team building strategy, that's really, really strong there from Federico. But the critical thing here for Raichu is it's able to go for that fake out, allowing Moltres potentially to be able to set up that nasty plot. And Grimmsnarl as well has the opportunity to maybe go for some screens. Raichu might be able to try and shut that down.
Yeah, you've got to be scared as well if you're Federico. You've got to be cautious about the Glastria going for the Dynamax here turn 1 and just attacking straight into your Moltres. Of course, without any sort of screen support yourself or Intimidate support, the Glastria is kind of going to be doing a lot of damage, and because of the Dynamax ability, you kind of mitigate any chance of being faked out and avoid that flinch opportunity there that the Raichu holds currently.
Well, Nick is going to shake things up. There's going to be no Gigantamax Venusaur because there's the Dynamax Glastria out on the field. Moltres, however, just going to go straight away for a Protect, maybe trying to catch a Max Hailstorm through the Protect to activate that weakness policy for free. It's going to be a light screen set up there by the Grimmsnarl as Raichu goes for Charm. So really interesting to see this move coming out here. Going to be lowering the attack by 2 stages. But of course, the White Herb on Nick's Glastria just going to reset that and going for the Max Hailstorm. Going to connect down into the Raichu, so not going to fall into the trap set by Moltres, and taking the Raichu right down to its Focus Sash. But of course, setting up that Hail, that last little bit of chip, is going to be able to remove the Raichu from play.
Yeah, what an incredible item. Again, we're seeing that come into full effect here. You think when you see the charm there from the Raichu, what a great play. You know, you were really reducing the damage output from this Glastrier, making it very difficult for getting any momentum later on in this game. But the White Herb there coming in so useful for Nick, just overwriting those drops and putting it right back in a pole position to take down the Raichu, especially with the Focus Sash there, targeting the right slot, making sure that he takes down the support network there for the Moltres. And the Grimmsnarl going to be able to set up more screen support, just provide more support going into this next turn for the Glastrier. And maybe it's time to, if you get rid of the Moltres here, of course, it could be a time to set your own Trick Room up, especially if we don't see the stack attack here from Federico.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting which Pokemon Federico is going to bring in, because it's going to, I think, really sort of carve out the way that he wants to play the rest of this game. It's going to be that Tapu Fini coming into effect once again. So setting up the Misty Surge, not going to be able, so Misty Surge setting up the Misty Terrain, not going to be able to let any status afflictions happen to those grounded Pokemon. But Moltres here, now it can't go for the Protect again. I mean, it can, but the risk is too high. What do you think it's going to go for on this occasion, Lee?
You feel like if there's something in the back to maybe switch it in, just to, and now if you are Federico trying to stall out these Dynamax turns from the Glastriers, probably the best thing to do. Preserve your Moltres for later in this game. You can see how much he didn't want to take big damage that first turn there from protecting it, but in that awkward position, like you say now, where you know you can't go for those consecutive protects very safely. So switching it out here could be a nice option. Depends what you got in the back. Have you got something like Cresselia that could potentially come in and kind of soak up the damage a little bit better than what he's got out on the field at the minute? Definitely an option, but Nick definitely in the driving seat, and it's all in Federico's hands to kind of do something right now to try and get an advantage back.
Well, Federico bringing in that mysterious Cresselia. If it's able to survive out the turn, you've got to watch out for that ally switch that we know Federico not only has on team, but hasn't been scared to use either. Federico, however, also going to be Dynamaxing up his Moltres, and this is where things can get a little bit interesting here for Nick, because if you target it down with a super effective move, you're going to be activating that weakness policy. So if you're Nick, double targeting into it and hoping that it is going to be enough to pick up the KO is going to be the strategy here. Moltres moving first, however, going for that Max Darkness, targeting down into the Glastrier, not doing a lot of damage, but is going to be reducing that special defense on both of Nick's Pokemon. That could come in critical in the next turn, particularly with Cresselia as well. Being a special attacker could be optimal. Spirit Break going to go down into that Moltres, going to be, of course, lowering the special attack, but activating that weakness policy. So negating the drop from the Spirit Break there, as Glastrier follows up with the Max Hailstorm. That's going to be able to connect down into the Moltres as well. Is it enough to pick up the KO? Yes, it is.
It is enough. It takes the big knockout there on Federico's, you know, Dynamax Pokemon here. So it's a huge turn. And if you're Nick, I think you make a really good call there, because, you know, you're normally worried, and we've said this before on throughout this event, that you're worried about activating the weakness policy on the Moltres. That's the biggest thing. But when you're moving after it and you've got screen support from the Grimmsnarl, you know, you saw the damage from that Max Darkness doing nothing to the Glastrier there. So being able to hit it after its attacks is perfect, because you know, even if you get it very close to being knocked out, the hail damage there, still residual damage going to come into effect and probably do the work for you. So really nice play removing that. And like I say, Nick really in the driving seat now, and just with this Cresselia and the Tapu Fini left on the field.
Yeah, exactly. All those kind of things sort of stacked up in Nick's favour. Like you said, the double target, even if it wasn't quite enough, you wouldn't have to worry too much about the Moltres, with the hail being able to pick up the KO against it. So the speed tiers and the sort of environment really helping out there. Tapu Fini, however, going to go for that Calm Mind, boosting up special defense and special attack, as well as Cresselia wants to follow up with a Ice Beam. Going down into that Grimmsnarl, it is going to be our -1 special defense, but still able to take that really well. Able to retaliate with that Spirit Break into Tapu Fini. Does a decent chunk of damage and can, of course, negate the boost that it just got from that Calm Mind. Glastrier, however, still to move, going for the Max Hailstorm. It's what it's been clicking, and it's certainly been paying off. Cresselia takes a huge amount of damage from that, as the hail will, of course, do its residual chip as well. So much damage coming out from this Glastrier here, Lee.
So much, you know, after that chilling nair boost as well, it just gets so powerful. And Nick really doing well with these Dynamax turns with the Glastrier, and showing how good a partnership that the Grimmsnarl Glastrier combination can be. You know, it just needs that screen support, and once it is Dynamax, it's even more difficult just to get damage onto. And the thing is, it's not like it's not throwing out the huge damage itself, like you've just mentioned, Lou. Look at that damage. It's nearly 75% damage that it's done to the Cresselia there, which is just phenomenal on such such a big and defensively built Pokemon. Tapu Fini has got a Calm Mind, but being mitigated all the time by the Spirit Breaks by Grimmsnarl, so you can go for those as much as you want, but you're only getting that special defensive boost, which isn't really helping you against the physical threat in front of you.
Exactly. Going to be a helping hand, though, from Cresselia, really wanting to support Tapu Fini into these last turns of the match. Going for that Muddy Water. Now, this is where things can change if accuracy drops want to come into effect. Is able to connect on both Pokemon, but no accuracy drops to be found. Going to go for that Spirit Break connecting into the Cresselia, but not enough to pick up the KO. I think Hail, if it is still going to hang around on the field, will be enough, however. Cresselia following up, however, with the close combat, and that's a sort of nod to past days, a close combat going into a Cresselia there, Lee.
Definitely a little throwback there, but just making sure that you are getting the damage that you need to remove the Cresselia, because you don't want to be going into these next few turns if you're Nick and having to worry about Ally Switch, because especially Ally Switch and Calm Mind as a combination, that's when Federico could really kind of turn this game on its head and start to turn the tables and start to maybe build a little bit of momentum. You want to just nullify that as soon as possible, and by just dedicating 100% accurate move into that slot just means with the Spirit Break backing it up there, you're going to be able to do that, take that down, and now it's just the Tapu Fini versus the world here.
Well, Federico not giving up, goes for that Muddy Water, does manage to avoid the Grimmsnarl, and again, no accuracy drops, of course. However, Tapu Fini will have its special attack dropped here. Glastrier going to follow up with the high horsepower, connects onto Tapu Fini, and thanks to the boost it's got from Chilling Neigh, easily going to be able to pick up the KO, allowing Nick Navarre to advance. So